some point, you gotta decide for yourself who you want to be. Can't let nobody make that decision for you.
Moonlight is both intimate and far-reaching in its implications. A film of grace and beauty, but without the saccharine sugar coating and other problematic elements that plague lesser contemporaries. Among some viewers, there was a question about whether this was a black film or a gay film, and the fact that this was a question says a lot about the general public's misunderstanding or even complete ignorance of intersectionality. Intersectionality is a sociological theory that various aspects of one's person do not exist in isolation. Race, gender, and sexual orientation are not separated by one another and actually have interwoven relationships. One influences the other, both personally and culturally. The theory of intersectionality explains that racism, sexism, classism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, and other forms of prejudice and discrimination interrelate with one another to create social systems of oppression. For example, the experiences of black women are different from the experiences of black men and white women. Black women experience gender discrimination and racial discrimination, but they also carry the burden of stereotypes specific to black women. Moonlight offers a unique look into various forms of discrimination. An example. In this scene, Chiron is in class. The teacher asks him if he is alright, and a bully responds for him, claiming that Chiron needs a tampon. Chiron is gay and obviously has no need for what the bully has claimed. In spite of the fact that the bully presumes Chiron is a homosexual, he is actually using sexist language to insult him, not homophobic language. Homophobia interrelates with sexism partly due to misconceptions about what it means to be a homosexual. An ignorant point of view about homophobia is that if a man is a homosexual, he is also akin to a woman. His masculinity is in question even though homosexuals vary from traditionally masculine to traditionally feminine, and everything in between. The bully does not see it that way and connects his homophobia with his sexism to use sexist language, somehow, against another man. Any individual's view of the world and the way in which they interact with the world will be unique. For example, Chiron is black, gay, and poor. He faces certain challenges in life because he is black. African Americans, upon being arrested, are more likely to be convicted for the same charge than someone who is white. They are also more likely to receive longer sentences than someone who is white. When Chiron stands up for himself against the bully, he is arrested. Fights break out in school all the time. White audiences, among them people who, when they were children, got in a fight or two at school, may have been surprised to see Chiron arrested and convicted of a crime as if he were an adult. According to the Campaign for the Fair Sentencing of Youth, minors of color are more likely to be expelled or suspended than white minors for the same violation of the rules or conduct. Studies from the Burns Institute show that minors of color are treated more harshly than white minors when arrested and prosecuted for the same offense. For example, white youths are over a third more likely to have sold drugs than African American youth, but African Americans are arrested at twice the rate of whites and represent nearly half of all incarcerated youth for drug offenses within the juvenile system. Chiron was bullied mercilessly with sexist language and physical assaults related to homophobia. Upon being arrested for defending himself after the fact, he was subjected to a racist criminal justice system that more frequently convicts black men over white men for the same crimes. When Chiron meets with Kevin after what seems like about a decade or so apart, Kevin says that this was not what he expected. He did not think that Chiron, a sensitive child who never wanted to do anyone any harm, could grow up to be a drug dealer with fronts in his teeth and huge rippling muscles. In an article for the Harvard Political Review, African-American writer Iriawan Ojo explained that Chiron is performing manhood and what Chiron perceives as black masculinity. Remember, under the theory of intersectionality, Chiron faces challenges because he is black and challenges because he is gay, but he also faces challenges specifically because he is both. He is performing black masculinity specifically as a means in which to distance himself from accusations of homosexuality and femininity. A cultural standard can often be defined in three categories: perception, expectation, and representation. Let's look at how black masculinity fits into these categories. Black masculinity is different from, by contrast, white masculinity because the perception of black masculinity carries negative connotations in America. Perception, not reality. This means that it is impossible to define black masculinity without addressing harmful stereotypes that are attributed to black men either in our society or in media. Chiron eventually adopts these stereotypes. He gets gold fronts, adopts a profession that is both feared by white men and romanticized in popular culture, and he becomes, as Kevin remarks, hard. As a youth, Kevin told Chiron that he cannot appear soft, or else the world will devour him. Chiron learns this lesson at a young age. His sensitivity is not supported, only admonished, even though it is done in a way by Kevin that appears to come from a place of care. Black masculinity creates expectations among black men. In an article from Odyssey, African-American writer Matthew Jones claims, "The media portrays black men as violent, hypersexual, and incompetent beings. It is proven that the media unjustly frames their news stories to sympathize more towards whites and less for blacks." Jones further states that if a black man does not have views, values, and morals that align with the black community, parts of the black community will be quick to label them as sellouts. Adopting an intersectional lens in media helps make a character three-dimensional. Chiron and Kevin do not follow predictable narrative patterns. Chiron, a gay character, does not die because he is gay. A trope that is all too familiar among the gay community, and honestly anyone even paying attention, is the propensity towards filmmakers killing their gay characters as pathos. An example in and of itself is not terrible. Characters die in film all the time, after all, but the fact that it is so widespread and such an encompassing pattern is troubling. Chiron is also not used as a prop for a narrative on sexually transmitted diseases. Chiron only has one sexual experience in the film, and not in such a way that he could contract an STI. Moonlight also portrays Chiron's sexuality as something accepted by some and hated by others. As said, Chiron is bullied in school because he is suspected of being gay, but he is loved and respected by others. When Chiron tells Juan, a father figure, about his concerns that he may be gay, Juan sympathizes with the child, telling him not to let anyone call him a homophobic slur or mistreat him in any way because of it. Teresa, Juan's girlfriend, cares for Chiron as well, long after the death of Juan. This representation of two loving people contrasts with the disprovable myth of extreme black homophobia. Recently, a study was released which largely cast doubt on the long-standing rumor that black communities were significantly more homophobic than white communities. African Americans, more than white, Hispanic, or Asian Americans, opposed discrimination against sexual minorities related to religion-based services. The study did show there is a lower than average support for same-sex marriage among African Americans in certain deep red, conservative southern states like Alabama and Mississippi, but this appears to be a matter of geographical culture and not blackness. Also, even in such places, black Protestants are more ambivalent than white evangelical Protestants, who oppose same-sex marriage at much higher rates. That is not to say homophobia does not exist in black communities, but the idea that it is somehow significantly worse in black communities across America is debunked by scientific data. The myth comes from a combination of anecdotal evidence and media portrayals. 20th century African American philosopher Cornel West once said, "I love my gay brothers. I love my lesbian sisters. For me, it's a matter of embracing their humanity, allowing them to choose in such a way that they are in the driver's seat regarding their lives. And of course, there's always effects and consequences, tremendous challenges, especially in a homophobic society. I can't stand male supremacy. I can't stand imperial subjugation. I can't stand homophobia." Separating the film into 3 chapters with 3 different actors and 3 different names, Little, Chiron, and Black, does a lot to reinforce the concept of a complex life. Not a life that is only one thing, an intersectional life. We are different people at different stages of our lives, but we are also different people at the same stage of our lives. Chiron interacts with a society that gives him labels even before knowing what those labels are. Children call him a homophobic slur before he knows what the word means and must ask Juan to define it for him. He is also called this before even knowing that he is gay. The world knows who he is and what he is before Chiron does, and this highlights the helplessness of living in a world that has already set limits and boundaries before we are even aware they exist. All three of Chiron's names are given to him by other people. Little, an insult from local children. Chiron from his troubled mother. Black from his friend Kevin. A lot of shots in the film are from behind Chiron, as if the audience is unable to read his emotions, just as Chiron is unable or unwilling to be himself when faced with the pressures and expectations of others. In contrast, the final shot is Chiron looking directly into the camera, suggesting he has found himself and is inviting us into his world. At the end of the film, we don't get an answer about what happens to Chiron. Does he remain a drug dealer? Does he give it up? It might be too optimistic to believe a proper relationship between himself and Kevin develops. He is still closeted in public, but at least now that he admits who he is to himself, he has a chance. Hi everyone. If you like what I do, please click on the orange Patreon link below. That's how this show happens. It's also how you can request an episode. There are also a lot of other perks for being a patron, so check it out. The information is on my Patreon page. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you next week.